Hi, this is Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the President, Founder, and Chief Listening Officer here at our network at USA Global TV and Radio. Thank you so much for your loyalty. Thank you so much to all of our guests, to our team members, to our sponsors, and to all of our elevated listeners. Here at USA Global TV and Radio, we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. We celebrate all of our team members, all of our guests, and all of our sponsors from around the world who come and lead their lives with their hearts to help other people walk into their greatness. If you'd like to be a guest on any of our shows, please go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com, and book your session. Please contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com and subscribe to our channel. Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, and our show today is the Mallorca Connection. We're going to be talking about the reality of the workforce with our expert who has been with us for one other show on the anniversary show of our first year in business. His name is Josef Stetter, and he is an expert who will help us in every way when it comes to finding gainful employment and telling us what's really going on. So before we bring him out, let's welcome the star of our show, Mr. Roland Friedel, who is still rolling through Europe in his motorhome. Let's welcome him and find out where he is and what he's been up to. Hello, Roland.
Hello, Jacqueline. Great to see you. And by the way, I love your hair. It's amazing. It looks really cool. A little bit hippie style. I love it.
Thank you. I get a little bored and I start braiding it. So, but,
you know this movie. I don't know the English one, but with Bo Derek and
she's running.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think I have maybe 40 years on her, but anyway, that's another story. So, Roland, tell our audience where in the world you are and what promoted you to just get in a motorhome and start driving.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. Yeah, my name is Roland. As you can hear from my accent, I have a German English accent. I'm born in Austria, a small little country in Europe, but I always have been a world traveler. I was always traveling the world for businesses. I was working for the largest corporations in the world. I did consulting, coaching, trainings for them all over the place since almost 3 decades. And my home base has been a beautiful island in Mallorca for the last 14 years, and I left it last year in March. So since 10 months, I'm traveling in my motorhome through Europe and living and working in my motorhome. And I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. The plan was to do it for a year. So in 2 months, the year is over. But I already made a decision that I will go much longer. I really love it. I enjoy it. I was in Austria and Germany. I spent a few weeks in France, I guess 7 weeks, about 3 months in Spain. Now I'm a little bit more than 6 weeks in Portugal. So right now I'm in Portugal and in the south in the Algarve. The next 2 days, so I spend all the time in the south because in the north it's snowing and a little bit cold. But in 3 days, I'm heading north. The Portuguese route is 66. So for the travelers in the world, there are 3 routes 66 in the world. It's the US route 66, the Argentinian one, and there's one in Portugal. So I will follow the N2, the Portuguese route 66 the next day. So right now I'm besides the seacoast, and please, hopefully I can finish all my shows today, because yesterday the police came and sent me away because I was standing illegally somewhere I didn't know it. So there's always challenges, but I'm broadcasting from Portugal right now.
I just love it. It just sounds so glamorous, that it's such a glamorous life, but there are challenges on the road as well, and you've shared some of them. Just tell us quickly a couple of things that have happened to you while you've been traveling around.
Well, you know what? I always say, the point is, doesn't matter what are you doing, you always bring yourself with you, So there are some challenges. I had a breakdown with the engine in France for 3 weeks. So I always thought I was wending up in the Alps. I had no power, and the motorhome is quite heavy. I made 3 miles an hour, so very, very slowly. I always was afraid that I'm rolling back, so I had a problem. Luckily, in a huge city, after 3 weeks in South France, I could fix that. The cat was sick, so I had to go to a veterinarian, what was not easy. And they did some surgery, blood tests, and injections. And then the cat disappeared because Phoenix was so sorry for that, pissed off with me. Then it disappeared for 2 days, and it was really challenging because I had to move. Yesterday was an amazing spot, really an amazing spot with many caves in sea. It was beautiful there, beautiful sunset, nice people around me. We have been 6-7 motorhomes from different parts of Europe. We had a nice come together, and then I went to bed early and a quarter to midnight. I was really deep sleeping, and it was a heavy knocking out of my motor. Like, oh, what's going on? And a lot of lamps, and the police came and said, yeah, we are sorry, but you're not allowed to stay overnight here, and you have to move. So I had to find another place to move around midnight. It was not easy in the area I was. And then I went to another place, a second place, midnight, and they sent me away again. So finally, after an hour, I found a place to get some sleep and rest. So sometimes you have challenges, but all over, it's an amazing experience because I learned so much about myself. Dr. Jekyll, I always love to challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone. I really love this. And it triggers me because I before 7 days ago I left the camping site. I was on a very luxury camping site for 2 weeks with an amazing spa, which was a 4 or 5-star camping site. It was really nice, and I only went there to meet friends there. But then you come to this comfort zone. I said, yeah, maybe I'm going to ask the receptionist to stay a few days longer. I said, no. Back on the road, challenge yourself and find new places and new people.
That's a great story. I love it. Sounds like it could be a movie. But when you just talked about learning, and of course we're talking about growing, our guest today is the guru who's going to help us walk through that whole process of finding a job or quietly quitting to start something new, and we don't know where to turn, who to turn to. He is the expert. He's the corporate culturist and the resume whisperer. Don't you love that title? Resume whisperer. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I'm very excited about the topic. I'm very looking forward to meet this gentleman because with one of my companies in Switzerland, we coach and consult businesses, finding, binding, educating, and leading people. So I'm very, very curious about his expertise, and yeah, absolutely.
It's fantastic. Let's welcome Josef Stetter to the program.
Hello, and thank you again, Dr. Jocelyn and Roland. It's a pleasure to be on the Mallorca show. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to share a little bit of my wisdom.
It's a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to have you here, Josef.
Tell our audience where you're joining from, please, Josef.
I'm joining from Toronto, Canada, although Roland's description of, traveling here and there, I have 2 little kids. I wish I was in that opportunity to do that too, but sounds like an exciting life, an exciting adventure.
Time will come. My kids are grown up, left the house, so time will come.
Absolutely.
So, Josef, you heard what Roland just said. Even when we're traveling, whatever it is we're doing, we can't leave ourselves. We can't run away from whatever it is. And yet when it comes to looking for a job, we sometimes make the same mistakes over and over and over again ad nauseum. And you've had quite an extensive career. You've worked a number of places. You've helped thousands of people. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I'll start with the fact that I didn't know what I want to do when I grew up. So I switched careers 9 times and jobs over 18 times. Along the process and of trying to figure out where and how, I got into recruiting, and I've been in recruiting for nearly 20 years. I've expanded my services from recruiting to now create a full corporate culture that includes kind of understanding personality assessments and how to use them effectively for a company, creating a culture, creating social responsibility where the staff actually buys in. It's not forced upon you. Offering outplacement services, and the outplacement services, I've written now 11 books. I actually just finished a collaboration book, and I've coached over 11,000 people how to land their dream job, basically now, and kind of done it from the corporate side in terms of understanding what I've been a generalist in recruiting for 20 years. So I've recruited for companies like Apotex Pharmaceuticals, Deloitte & Touche, Tata Consulting Services, Aecon Construction. So I've kind of touched multiple industries and 20 years of experience, I've noticed patterns, and helping over 11,000 people, there's clearly patterns from both sides, both from the job seeker that, everybody knows how to find a job, but if it's taking you up to a year to find a job, you don't know how to find a job. And from organizations that, have the kind of old school mindset of you should just be thankful that you're getting a job, to organizations that truly understand and value their employees, and everything in between, to kind of create a model of here's what is usually missing in the conversation.
Thank you, Joseph. Joseph, one question before we go deeper. From your experience, is it still an employer market, or it is an employee market? And what changed the last 3 years through these challenging times we have all been facing around the globe?
So here's where, like, the pandemic resulted in over 65 million people in North America losing their job. But the pandemic also created a scenario where, because people were working from home, a lot of employees now have this sense of you owe me. So even before I start working here, I don't want to come to the office. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I've actually had candidates that reject ludicrous job offers. When I say ludicrous, I'm talking about people that are making, let's say, 120,000. My client's offering them 180,000 with a 25% bonus, but they have to come into the office once a week. And the candidate looks at me and goes, I'm not sure if a $60,000 or half my salary is worth coming into the office once a week. So you're getting a little bit of both. I think there's some industries where it's definitely an employer's market, and there's some industries that it's definitely the candidate market. It depends on where. Like if you're, let's say, a software developer, lots more perks and lots more opportunities. It's definitely a candidate market. Whereas in professions like accounting, legal, most of the white collar professions, it's still an employer market right now.
Okay. Got it. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much. I just want to touch on what you mentioned about people getting an attitude, I guess, about saying, I'm not going to come into the office. Or I remember I actually did this. I haven't had that many jobs, maybe I want to say 4 or 5, but one of them I was like, I must have 6 weeks vacation, because that's what I got at the last place. And I was really holding out for that, and I didn't get it. And I thought, I was angry, but then I thought, you'll eventually work your way into it. But people, like, that was a dumb thing. If I would have let that job go because of that vacation time. What do you think about standing your ground for certain things that you feel are really important to you?
So I'm going to answer that, because this comes into negotiating salary as a mindset. If you have confidence and you've demonstrated results, most people, when they go to an interview, talk about they know how to do this, they know how to do this, or they've done this, they've done that. So I like to give these 2 examples quickly, if I may. If you're hiring a receptionist and someone comes to you and says, I know how to answer the phone, I hope that you look at them in shock and go, really? A receptionist that knows how to answer the phone? I did not know that. Because unless they live in an igloo, a cave, or are a Mennonite, everybody on earth knows how to press the green button, go, hello, how can I help you? However, if a receptionist says to you, I know how to answer 60 calls a day with 12 different lines, I can measure 60 calls a day with 12 different lines. I cannot measure, I know how to answer the phone. And the problem is that the majority of people, when they go to an interview, is they focus on the first one. So if I use my own career as a background, I can say I'm an excellent salesperson. I've done B2B, B2C, account management, lead generation, relationship building. I've worked in retail. I've worked door-to-door sales. I've done car sales. I've done recruiting sales. I've done private college sales, et cetera, et cetera. I've given you a lot of jargon, but I haven't told you whether or not I know how to sell. However, if I say to you that as a sales leader, I was hired by a company that owns over 60 private colleges in Canada to build their call center from scratch. The expectation was that my team would generate an extra $300,000 a year for the business, with restrictions that the team calls leads that are more than 75 kilometers from the nearest campus and more than 4 months old. In less than 6 months, my team did $2.25 million. So the moment I've quantified what I can do, I've proven to the employer that if you hire me, you're going to get great results. And if you want those great results, a 6-week vacation shouldn't be the deciding factor. The results will be. If you focused on, I have this background and I've done this and I know how to do this, and you haven't quantified the results that you produce, you haven't convinced the company that you're worth a 6-week vacation, for example.
I love that. That's really
Absolutely.
good. Very insightful.
Absolutely. But I always said, I don't care where you're coming from. I want to know where you're going to, where you're heading to. It's also about results, bringing new results, and not about talking about old stories. Yeah. Because so many people always talk about all success stories. But the question is, what can you do for my company and bring into my company?
Right. So there has to be a tie in that when you're being interviewed, one of the biggest mistakes that most candidates make is it's about me, me, me. The reality is when you're being interviewed, it's about them, them, them. So if you've produced this result, a simple sentence such as, if you hire me, I can only do it better for your company, will make the difference between what you did in the past versus what you can do for me. Again, simple sentence, but the majority of employees or employers, job seekers, don't think about that. And the problem is that a lot of organizations that have HR are not trained in sales. They're trained in kind of, this is the form that you need to fill. These are the questions that we want you to ask. This is kind of the process. So they don't think to ask, how would you make it better? And it's kind of facts versus proof. And so there's a difference where, as an employment agency, when I speak to candidates about my clients, there's a level of salesmanship. There's a level of, this is the opportunity. This is the growth. This is the learning you're going to have. This is something exciting that it's my job to figure out will get you to leave your current role to come to my clients, for example. And it can be a longer vacation. It could be education that's paid. It could be, corporate culture that's very good. It could be certain initiatives that are being done. But the reality is that, there needs to be a level of explaining why that is. And a lot of times we're stuck in the formula, right? No disrespect to anybody in HR, but most of the time when I've dealt with HR, they're like, okay, tell me about this job. It's a generic question that gives you a generic answer. So I modify the question by saying, tell me what were your biggest successes in this job and give me the details on how you got them. So now I have a clear picture of whether or not you would be a fit for my company or my client, and therefore produce results for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. I have a question, Josef, because we started a little bit from the candidate side. When somebody applies for a job or get a call from a recruiter and prepares for an interview, what should they prepare? Should they prepare about the whole industry, about just a segment, about the special organization, or what should they be prepared about?
So, kind of like I started the conversation, I usually kind of coach people to say, focus on your big 5 results: how you've made money, how you saved money, how you increased efficiency, right? And give me details about it, because the examples you give, if a company asks you to expand on the example that you gave or to give a second similar example, they just gave you a huge hint that you're saying the right things and they're very interested in learning more, because right now you're ranking highly in terms of hiring you. And so in terms of preparation, obviously, again, if it's a phone interview as an initial interview, if you have the results, more often than not, the results will cover the majority of HR questions that you get. And it will also allow the HR to give better notes to, let's say, the leadership or the team that needs to hire. So again, if I'm going to use, let's say, IT as a profession, you can give me a lot of software that you know how to code in. Mm-hmm. But if you haven't explained the kind of projects that you've done, there's a very big difference in mindset between working for a bank and working for a startup. Because in a bank, everything is documented and there's policies and procedures and documentation. In a startup, you might have to create that documentation. You have to be a little bit more resourceful to show that you can solve the problem, and figure it out in different ways. And this is where your examples will help paint that picture more holistically and more fully, where employers can go, okay, you said this is interesting. Can you explain this, or can you expand on this? Can you do something to prove that you know this, for example?
Yeah. I have a question I want to ask, because I know this is what I'm about to share is something that many people have been going through as a result of the pandemic. You've done the same kind of thing for years,
Right.
and you want to do something else, and you're not sure what. For example, I sold meetings and events for, I think, 18, 20 years. And now I'm doing this, right? You wouldn't think there's anything in common, but I've been interviewing executives for years, but I don't know that I would have thought about this as where I could go. So my question is, when people are looking for jobs, can you help them by looking at what they've done and maybe offer some suggestions of some things that they might be interested in doing, even if they have no experience? Or is that a bad path to go down?
Listen, I've switched careers 9 times, and I've switched careers where I wasn't working in the same industries. I worked in finance to go to recruiting. I worked in, so it's about how you relate it. And a very quick way of, even without my services, doing it is either make a list of 100 things you love or 100 things you hate. And it could be job related. Like, I hate doing paperwork all the time. I hate doing accounting. Like, I'll recruit accountants, but I don't enjoy looking at Excel spreadsheets all day. So I pay for very good accountants to do it for me. I give them the information, they summarize, they give me the information I need to know as the executive. So there's a level where even if you've worked in the same career path or in the same direction for many, many years, in any experience that you had, if you think about when you go home and you talk to your partner, right? Do you come and say, oh, I did my job again today? Generally not. Generally, it's like, you know what? I had this huge problem to fix today. I spent 3 hours, but I figured out how to do it. And I think what I figured out is brilliant. And I did this, and this. That is what employers need to hear, especially when you're trying to show those transferable skills and that you can handle a different situation. And this is also a trap for most employees, because if a company says, have you ever done this? The default answer is no, but I'm a very quick learner. In 20 years of recruiting, I've met very few people that go, no, and it'll probably take me forever to figure out how to do it. No one says that. But if you've done something similar, you can say, here's something similar that I did. Here are the results that I produced. And this is why I'm confident I can do the same for you. And that ties into what Roland was saying about, what can you do for me? But it's that transition where you start with what do you like, dislike. What are some of your hobbies or interests? Because a lot of people don't think that their hobbies or interests can be monetized, can be an opportunity. Like, I talk to a lot of people that I'm very artistic, I'm musical, I like to work out. And I'm like, have you ever thought of being a occupational therapist? And then all of a sudden they're like, what? What's that? I mean, when I explain it, I'm like, yeah, if you're willing to commit 2 years to get educated, or 3 years, these are the opportunities that exist for you. But if you're not willing to get re-educated or trained, again, what are the key things that, as your day-to-day job, Dr. Jackson, you mentioned that you were kind of in event booking for 18 years. So what are the elements that you enjoyed? You enjoyed interacting with people. You enjoyed this. Those are things that, okay, here's how you can monetize it. And there's a wide variety of personality assessments that exist, from People Best, from Talent Sorter Technologies, that you can go that will kind of say, here are kind of the career path that might be best for you. Myers-Briggs, Colby, some of the older ones that have existed for years that kind of say, based on your interests, based on the way you make decisions, here are some good choices for you.
Great answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. I have two questions. One question is, when I'm now I guess in my 60s soon. When I look back 2.5, 3 decades. Yeah, in the corporate world, it was more okay. You stay with one company for a long time. Like my dad, he after university, he started a job and he retired in the same company on different levels, of course, in the career. But he went to the same company, and I know when I started my career, it was. Sorry, when I started my career, it was also when you change too many times companies or industry, it was not a good sign because you're not stable, you're not focused. Now there's a different trend, especially in Europe. So the broader your expertise, when you move into different parts, the better it is. What would you suggest? Are there industry where it's better you have a stable part of your career, and where is the industry where you say, okay, it's good when you have, or I wouldn't say industry, maybe it's a job description that will say, okay, the broader the expertise, the better.
So I'm going to answer it this way to you, right? My father, God rest his soul, was a civil engineer for 45 years until he passed. And every time I asked him, would he redo his career? His answer was always yes. He loved the problem solving, and he worked internationally in Africa, in Europe, in North America, and did a variety of projects. And even though he had bad bosses, where at a certain point he chose to stay at a job because he was providing for the family, and I respect and admire that greatly. There's a level of, again, are you still passionate about it? Most people that go to university never work in what they study in university. In many business universities in North America, you're taught to work for a company for 3 to 5 years, leave on very good terms, go see if the grass is greener for a year, maybe 2, then come back to the organization, because they'll appreciate who you were and what you did, and you're more likely to get the raise and the promotion when you come back to the company than working for the company for 35 years. So I think even Steve Jobs kind of mentioned that, when he was fired from Apple, when he had 2 or 3 days where he woke up and said to himself, is this what I want to do today? And the answer was no for more than 3 days. That was the time or signal for him to make a change. And I think today with technology, today with their, I still come from culture of, get a good job, work 9 to 5, get your pension, get your benefits, and, don't be an entrepreneur. So I have a little bit of both because it calms my mom down, but it allows me to also expand and grow and serve more people, for example. But I think there's a level where, again, are you passionate about it? Are you enjoying it? Are you, if you're chasing money, you'll set yourself up to burn out and fail. If you're enjoying it, the money will come to you. And the more you enjoy it, the more money will come because people will recognize how good you are. So Roland, using you as an example, you mentioned that you've been in the corporate world for 3 decades. You've established a reputation of what you can do as a strategist, as a consultant, that even if organizations haven't used you for years, they'll reach back to you because they trust your ability to deliver results. At the end of the day, on the business world, it's making money, saving money, increase efficiency. However that looks like, whether it's automation, whether it's systems, whether it's strategy, whether it's, a new approach or a new product or a new service, that's what a business exists for. No one's hiring you because there's an empty chair and it looks unusual that there's an empty chair.
Absolutely. I can absolutely relate to this, Joseph. Because I remember one of my best friends, he has been working, 25 years for a bank, very successfully, become a director, very successful. And then they fired him because they closed the whole department. And he came to me and he was, what shall I do? What shall I do? What shall I do? And I gave him advice. Please look for a job outside of a bank. Don't become an expert, an idiot just in one topic. And he went in the automotive industry, in another industry, and now he's back in the same bank. They took him back after 7 years with a much better job, with much higher salary, and they absolutely appreciate the experience he had in other industries. Absolutely. I can absolutely relate with what you're saying. Absolutely.
Right. And this is where, I think gone are the days of companies expecting somebody to work there for 35 years. It's very rare because, again, we live in an opportunity where, let's say on social media, you kind of see people become instant millionaires or whatever. It's not that they're instant. Like, nobody understands the amount of work an entrepreneur goes through to earn the right to build the credibility. Like, I've invested 25,000 hours to master job finding, to master why resumes don't get a response. I've worked as a recruiter where, like, I'll share an example. Like, one of my clients was Tata Consulting Services, a division of Tata International, and they were redoing a mortgage software for one of the big banks here in Canada. It was a $50 million project. Tata called me and was like, we need 70 Java developers in like 3 weeks. I worked 18-hour days, screened, tested, referenced, had everybody ready to go. 3 weeks later, they're like, tell them to hold off for a month because we're renegotiating some of the contract. And I'm like, do you realize I've worked 18-hour days to get this to happen? And they were like, yeah, well, we're renegotiating. A month later, they were like, tell them to hold off for another 2 to 3 months. I'm like, you're making me look like an idiot right now to every person that I've spoken to because you're not even starting the jobs with them. And then after they started, they looked at me and said, well, since we gave you such a high volume, we want to pay you less. And I went, no, I don't care how big you are and how international you are. You have a signed contract with me. If you do not honor that contract, I will have my lawyers sue you, right? Because, I didn't sleep for 3 weeks in order to make sure that I deliver what I promised to you. So on the company side, there is now also an expectation of perfection. I've dealt with an IT company recently that gave me a job description with 25 different languages and coding. And 5 of those languages only came out to market in the last 3 to 6 months. And I found them somebody with 20 of the 25 technical skills that they asked for. And my contact, who's very high up in the company, was like, no, we want somebody with all 25. I'm like, that is even more of a needle in the haystack than what I found you, because 3 to 5 of those software have only come out in the last 3 to 6 months. So the odds of finding somebody that has that software as experience is slim and none. And, I gave you 20 out of 25, and the 3 that are missing, they're very similar to these 3 others. So, we're talking semantics here. Mm-hmm. And they refuse to listen to that. And that's where you have organizations that are stuck in the past and think that, people should be thankful that I'm offering them a job. Mm-hmm. No, because especially younger generation, before they even have the first interview with you, they go on glassdoor.com to read reviews. They look at, are people complaining about this company or employees that work there on social media saying, this is how I was treated. Don't go there. It's an awful place to work. Right? People are doing their research beforehand. People are more educated. And with the advent of social media and AI, information is at your fingertips. Let's be honest about that. And so, companies that don't see that and are not willing to change, with the exception of banking and insurance, because as the movie said, they're too big to fail. Right. Every other industry, companies, like candidates, are looking whether or not it's worth working for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Josef, a question I wanted to ask you, touched on this on the other show, the Celebration show, is about the resume itself and how resumes can just end up in a pile of electronic pile. And you talked about differentiating yourself. I'd love to have you share about that again with our audience.
By all means. So, and thank you for asking the question. So by default, most organizations have now gone apply in line because it's the easiest way to eliminate candidates, also an easy way to collect data. Now, the reality is that one job posting on Indeed will get between 350 and 5,000 applicants. Most companies, by default, HR will look at the first 100 and figure that out of the first 100, they'll probably get someone that is a good match. So here are 5, what I call the cardinal sins of a resume, why no one is calling you for there. So starting with, you use Times New Roman, Arial, or Calibri as your font. Why? Because those are the 3 default fonts in Microsoft Word. right? So if you remember the movie Legally Blonde, when Elle Woods or Reese Witherspoon applies to Harvard and then applies to the internship, she gives a pink scented resume. And everybody in the committee looks and goes, it's pink and it's scented, but they remember it. Now, I'm not saying that you need a pink scented resume, but even let's say adding color to your headings will break the black and white monotony that everybody sees and every typical resume looks like. Second thing that is a cardinal sin is your bullet points are usually the black circles, squares, or hyphens. Okay, if you use Microsoft Word and go to insert symbol or go to your bullet there, you can use a little diamond, you can use a little, that is a little bit more creative, that again breaks the eyes from the routine. The third cardinal or sin is just having a kind of summary of skills or skills section where most people fill it with fluffy, useless information such as I'm hardworking, dedicated, committed, team player with excellent communication skills and interpersonal skills. In 20 years of recruiting, I've met very few people that say, listen, I'm lazy, I'll show up late, none of my work will be any good, and I really, really hate people. Please hire me. Now, the only time that works is if you're related to somebody in the company or having an affair with them. Okay? But that, like, let's say hardworking. How do you define hardworking? The reality is that if I compare, let's say, nurses that work during the pandemic to an accountant, during tax season, it is mandatory for an accountant to work 80 hours a week. So what's hardworking? 100? A nurse that worked during the pandemic had to maybe do 4 or 5 hours of overtime because the other nurse wasn't available. So does that mean that the nurse that's working 4 or 5 hours of overtime is less hardworking than the accountant because she's working less hours? No, because there's a different level of stress. And my definition of hardworking could be very different than yours, Dr. Jacqueline, and very different than Roland's. We each have our own definition, and so does every organization. So it's redundant to fill your resume with that information. The next part, and again, this is where the pandemic really hit people, is having a chronological or functional resume and kind of listing everything in order that you've done. Now, if let's say you lost your job during the pandemic, and now you're working at Dunkin' Donuts, selling coffee and donuts. If that's the first thing on your resume and you're an engineer by profession, nobody looks at you seriously as an engineer because most employers spend between 8 and a maximum of 30 seconds reading your resume. So create what's called a semi-functional resume where you put your engineering skills first, not your Dunkin' Donuts skill first, even though that's the most recent job that you've had. And the biggest cardinal sin of all, which I spoke about earlier in this interview, is quantify your results, not list every acronym and tell me that you know how to do it. Because if I use Roland, for example, he mentioned that he's been a consultant for a long part of his career. So as a consultant, if he tells me that he knows how to create strategy and he has vision and he knows how to do reporting, okay. But unless I know the value of the reporting that he did or the value of the vision or the results that he produced, I can't gauge based on those keywords whether or not he is a great consultant and the right consultant for me. Because again, there's a difference between a consultant that comes in at a startup phase where they're the first to come up with the idea and then the company runs with it versus someone that comes later in when things have saturated and now you're kind of changing or tweaking a few things to liven it, freshen it, bring it back to a level of profitable kind of thing. So it's not enough to say the words. It's more important to kind of explain the projects that you did, what was the expected outcome, what was the actual outcome. You know, did you surpass expectation? Did you finish the project under budget? Did you finish the project ahead of schedule? Those are things that matter. And most people that write resumes tend to kind of go, yes, I like this. Yes, this is good. You know, like I've never met an accountant that doesn't know how to do financial statements. And if I do, I will definitely not hire them, because if you're an accountant and you have no idea what a balance sheet is, how are you an accountant?
Really good. I love the stories and the analogies too. It really helps put it into perspective. So I have a zillion more questions for you, but we're out of time. And I know you're coming back. What's the next show that you're on? Do you know?
I think there's one in 2 weeks. I don't remember. It's on my calendar. Kind of thing.
Perfect. Well, thank you for continuing to share this valuable information. And how can people work with you? What does that engagement look like?
So again, I have two businesses. So on the organizational side, on the corporate side, as a corporate culturist, I offer 5 pillars of services. The first is old school headhunting recruiting. I do not use job boards. It's a waste of time and energy to find you great people. Second pillar of understanding is if there's a lot of turnover in the company, I can customize the surveys to really dig into the core of where and why there's employee dissatisfaction. The third pillar is I have kind of vendor agreements with some of the largest personality assessments in North America, where I can help an organization understand how their current employees think, act, and behave. And when they hire me to do recruiting, I also do those personality assessments on the candidates I present to them so that they get that data on top of my notes and the resume. Then the fourth pillar is corporate social responsibility. A lot of organizations preach it, but force their employees to participate, but don't actually understand how to engage their employees. And the last pillar is outplacement. My apologies. Where again, if a company is facing harsher times and needs to downsize, I can take and the people that are being downsized, this is my second business. It's called Land Your Dream Job Now. And I've created kind of a course that takes my 25,000 of mastery. And I've done the homework for people. So I've researched the top 300 employment agencies in USA and 300 in Canada, the top job boards in Canada and the United States, samples of resumes, how to optimize your LinkedIn profile, how to negotiate salary, how to, everything's there. Kind of the homework's done for you. All you have to do is take action for it. And with that, when organizations are downsizing, if they have executives or people that work for them for 20, 30 years and haven't been interviewed for a while, then they can kind of pay for my team to hold that person's hand a little bit more, give a little bit more one-on-one time and help them out. And, if it's taking you 6 months to a year to find a job on your own, you're not doing it correctly.
All right. Wow. Fantastic. Thank you so much for another brilliant interview and for really giving us the insights that we need so that we can get the job, the career that we want. And you're the man to call.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And Roland, I hope you enjoy more of your adventures in traveling Europe and possibly South America. Sounds like you're definitely enjoying life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. And please, to all of our audience members, please do reach out to Joseph. You have his contact information right here. What are you waiting for? We also have his LinkedIn. Let's put that up as well. And Roland, I hope you and Joseph will connect also. That'll be fabulous. All right. And Roland, how can people reach out to you? And what's the value that you can provide to them?
Well, I'm so product handler with all these years. So the best is when you want to connect with me, go on my website. It's my name, rolandfriedl.com. I will spell it for those who are on a podcast or a radio station. It's ROLANDFRIEDL.com. And whatever you want to talk to me, whatever you want to share with me, let's get in contact. I guess for sure we're going to find a topic. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, we are all signing off together. Thank you, everybody, for being here at USA Global TV and Radio. Our next show is coming up. It's also hosted and moderated by, you guessed it, Mr. Roland Friedl. And we look forward to the men's show, Wild at Heart. We'll be right back in several minutes. Thank you. Thanks again, Joseph.
Bye. Thank you very much for having me.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. See you at the Wild at Heart show.
See you.